We are absolutely so privileged, thrilled to be with you here tonight. Candy, thank you so much for just allowing us just to share a little bit of our story and why we are so passionate for this great ministry. We kind of want to start, though, by sharing one of our very favorite verses. And our eyes are older than 25 years, so we're now reduced to using eyeglasses to read. So
it does happen. I'm going to read to you from Isaiah 61, 1 through 4. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair.
You know, that's one of our very favorite Old Testament passages, which is real appropriate because Erin and I actually met in the back of an Old Testament theology class.
Yes, we did. We were sitting in the back of this class, and I had just transferred into this new small Christian university, and I had seen this guy on campus, but hadn't really ever met him, and was sitting behind him, and obviously the night before you were out. I don't know what you were doing, but you must have been very tired. I don't think that he had a lot of sleep because he was sitting right in front of me, sound asleep.
I was praying. I keep telling her this.
Yes,
Sheesh.
You could have been, but what gave you away, he wasn't just sleeping, he was drooling sleeping. And so there was drool pooling on the desk, and it was about to drip over. So I decided to help him. So I shook him, and I woke him up.
Okay, so first of all, did you hear what she said that she was trying to help me? Did you hear that part? Okay, can I share with you her idea of helping me? Okay, I was sleeping, I will give her that, in the back of this huge class. And so I had never met Erin. She was a total stranger to me. She leans forward, all right, grabs my arm, and kind of shakes me awake. So I pop awake and kind of wipe the drool off my face. And I looked at her like, what? And so this is what she does. She leans in. She goes, quick. And I went, what? She goes, quick, you got to stand up. And I went, what? She goes, yeah, quick, you got to stand up. And I said, why? She goes, the professor, he just called on you. I said, to do what? She goes, he just called on you to pray. I said, don't cheer her on, all right? Jeez. So I said, are you being serious? And she goes, yes, quick, you got to stand up. Now, I had never met her before. This is a stranger. Why would a stranger make something up? It's impossible, right? So from the back of this classroom, I stood up and I started to pray out loud. So have you ever been praying out loud and you get that really eerie feeling that people are looking at you? Because I could feel it. It was like the Force. You know, I could tell something was going on, so I kind of peeked, and I could see people pointing at me, and they're laughing, and I don't know what's going on. I'm checking my zipper, and I don't know what's happening. So I just finished praying, and then I sat down. And now the whole class is laughing at me. My friends are on the ground kind of slapping the floor. I look at her, and she's red in the face. I mean, I'm still not sure what's happened until the professor goes, Greg, he goes, appreciate your enthusiasm. He said, great prayer, but he said, maybe next time you could let me finish lecturing before you close the class in prayer. Is that the meanest thing you've ever heard in your entire life? I mean, you can be honest. You can take it, all right? Now, what I always kid her about is that that was actually the moment for me that I knew that I wanted to marry her, all right? Seriously, I thought, wow, anybody that is that bold to play that kind of a joke on a stranger, I mean, think of the fun that we'd have, or at least spend a lifetime with me. That'll get her back. So either way, but it's not quite the same moment for you, I don't think.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the same moment for me. Seeing drooling probably wasn't at the top of my list. But little did we know.
It's my prayer language, actually.
His friends actually did put me up to that, just to
Yeah.
defend myself a little bit.
Right.
But little did we know 4 years later that we would be dating and pretty serious. And I was really expecting Greg to propose at any time, but there seemed like there was something that was holding him back.
Yeah. There actually was. I knew there was something I needed to share with Erin, that I needed to tell her, but I was so afraid, especially because she had such a good thing, a radical passion for pro-life. So I was afraid.
And I was really radical about it because of this lady named Irene. She was in her 20s, and she found herself in a pretty unexpected place, pregnant for the second time out of wedlock in the late 60s. So she already had a 3-year-old daughter, and here she found herself pregnant again. And she was contemplating abortion. She didn't know what else, she didn't know what other choice she really had. That she already had this 3-year-old, how would she provide for 2? But someone intervened. Actually, a local pregnancy center actually intervened with Irene and convinced her to have the baby and place that baby girl for adoption.
And I'm so grateful, because 23 years later, I was just about to ask that girl to marry me. And that was why I was so afraid to tell Erin a secret that I had held for a number of years. See, my story is a little bit different. About 3 years before that, I found myself really in the same place that Irene found herself in. But I didn't have anybody who intervened. My story is I grew up in a great family. Some of you know my dad. His name's Erin Smalley. Some of you thought I was Erin Smalley tonight, and he looks a lot younger, man. He's written like 60 books, and son, sorry for the disappointment. I'm used to that, though. So I grew up in this great family. Taught me right from wrong. I loved the Lord. Had a great relationship with the Lord. I was dating a girl, and mine was kind of that story that you hear every once in a while. The good Christian kid, never got in any trouble, never really rebelled. And then one time, kind of my girlfriend and I just went too far in our relationship, and she ended up pregnant. It's very devastating. We were very, very confused. We weren't sure what to do. We really actually weren't even sure if she was pregnant, and just looked in the phone book. And what caught my eye was a little ad that said, free pregnancy test. And so I said, well, let's go and find out one way or the other. And so she and I went, and I was naive. I didn't really even know where we were. As we were there, and the nurse came back and delivered the news that, in fact, that she was pregnant. I just remember just the flood of emotions, the flood of shame, the flood of just feeling confused. Candy, as she talked about just that fear. I remember sitting in this white, sterile office where we're both bawling and so afraid. My parents had said one time, I know they never meant that I heard it this way, and we've talked about this, and I don't think this is what they said. What I heard was that if you ever, Greg, got a girl pregnant, that Dad would have to leave the ministry. He couldn't do what he's doing if that was happening. And sort of with that clear in my mind at the moment, this nurse also said, actually, we could take care of that right now. And unfortunately, just in the state that we were, we made such a horrendous choice. I remember sitting in this waiting room. I was staring at an aquarium. I remember that there was music on. I couldn't tell you the name of the song, but 25 years later, if that song comes on the radio, instantly I'm right back staring at that aquarium. There came a point in time I think I realized what was happening and the choice that I was making, and stood up and asked to go see her, and right at that time she came out, and it was done. It was over. I tell you, that choice, for me, just launched me into such deep, dark depression. I couldn't tell anybody. I just wanted to pretend that never happened, and just stuff it and just hide it. And yet that's why I was so afraid. Here I'd fallen in love, and yet I knew Erin's story. And I was so convinced that she would never, ever want to marry someone like me. I was just so broken.
Yep. And then you think back to the Isaiah verse, he comes to bind up the brokenhearted. So as Greg shared his story with me, I couldn't stand in judgment because Greg was brokenhearted. I was brokenhearted. I know the Lord was brokenhearted. But he promises he comes to bind up those broken hearts. And so I knew the grace and the forgiveness that I had been shown in my life. And without a doubt, as he shared his story with me, I knew that this was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with.
You know, of all the ironic things, it was, I knew I had to tell her about this because I wanted her to know and to marry me with full knowledge of what I had done. And I could never figure out the right timing. I tried many times, and I had just been accepted at Denver Seminary. And so I was going to take a trip out there to move my stuff, and I asked her, I said, hey, would you like to drive with me? And, we spend all these hours in the car, and then you kind of, take a look at Denver, because we had talked a little bit about, our life and maybe the direction we were heading, and so she agreed. We were going to drive it all in one day and then stay with some friends, and she could kind of see Denver, and then I think she was going to fly back. And so, the trip was wild. As we were driving, it was kind of later in the afternoon. I got very tired, and so I was driving this old, beat-up U-Haul truck, and I was pulling my car in the back. And so I finally said, Erin, I need your help. You've got to take over. I need to rest for a little bit. I want you to drive, but she refused. I mean, I don't even know why, but she wouldn't drive it.
It was a stick shift, and it was this very large truck, and I was like, I can't drive that. I don't know how to do all that, and it's very big, and so I knew that
very safe.
I think because we ended up with that one because we didn't really even plan ahead and think, oh gosh, we should really reserve a truck.
It helps, I've heard, to actually make plans, but I didn't think that one through.
And actually have directions too mapped out, but
I was like,
in love.
There's signs, we're just going north. I mean, come on. So I told her, remember, she's a nurse, and I said at one point, you got to help me. I mean, I'm falling asleep. I figured she could give me stuff, to help me stay awake. Well, she goes into like this truck stop and comes back out with this big brown paper bag full of stuff. I mean, I don't remember what it was, but it was like
No-Dose and B12 and, those energy drinks. And I just gave it all to him.
Weight loss pills. I don't know why that got thrown in there. She said, they got caffeine in them. And I don't know. I still wonder about that. So she starts giving me all this. Like Jolt Cola. Remember that? Okay. So I'm popping these pills, chasing it with Jolt Cola. Well, all of a sudden, my heart starts to race. And I'm breathing real hard. And I said, is it okay to take all this stuff together? And she said, I think so. Let me look. And so she's reading labels going, how many of those did you take? I don't know. I'm taking whatever you're giving me. I mean, I was so wired. I was like, how far is Canada? We're going all the way, Well, we hit Colorado Springs, which we now live in. It's wild. So we hit Colorado Springs late in the night, and I told her, I said, I can't go to Denver. We're going to have to stop. We're just going to have to find a place, and we'll call our families, let them know we're okay, and get 2 rooms. Well, it was the parents' weekend at the Air Force Academy.
Now we understand what that means.
Which
but
the map
back then,
might have said
yes,
that.
We had no idea that means there are no hotel rooms available. And so we pulled off of I-25, and literally we go to this one Hampton Inn, and we say, where do we get a room? And they're like, well, head downtown, and there should be a room down there. Well, we should have known if there was a room available. There was probably something wrong. But off we went. We were in love, and good,
and
great,
let's
wired,
go. Exhausted. So they tell us, if you go to this one place downtown, I guarantee they'll have a room. So I pulled the semi in around kind of the complex and walked into the office, and I said to the guy, hey, you got any rooms left? And he goes, no. He goes, only have one. I went, I said, I need 2. And he kind of looked at me like, that's weird. I'm looking at him like, you're kind of weird. And I said, I need 2. And he goes, well, I don't even have 2, but I have 1. You can have 1. I said, well, at least are there double beds? And he goes, what? And again, like I'm asking something wrong, and I can't track any of this. And he goes, no, we only, each room has one bed. And I said, oh, fine. I said, I'll take it. And then he goes, well, how many hours would you like to rent it for? And I'm like, what? I didn't get it. And I said, well, all night long. And he's like, hey. And I'm going, oh, what a weird dude, So I grabbed our sheet set and walked back, to tell Erin the news. Good grief. There is the worst. I slept on the floor of this place. You didn't even, what in the world? How'd you let me sleep on the floor?
Well,
it was like shaggy carpet.
It was red. It was red shag carpet, and it had a red velvet bedspread. Yes,
Only
that had other features.
That's what you're getting into. You marry me. So we tried to call back home, but none of the phones worked. And so the next morning, I wake up, my neck's all, from sleeping on the floor. And so I know that Erin loves Diet Coke. And so I went to get into the vending machine to get her a Diet Coke. And it was weird. As I walked by, I see this cable lying on the ground. I was like, well, that's weird. And I went into the office, to return whatever. And the guy's really upset. And I said, hey, buddy, here's the key back. And he's like, And I said, why are you what are you upset about? And he goes, well, no, the phones work. I said, yeah, no kidding. And he goes, I can't figure out why. And so as I went back out to go back, I see the cable again. And I just sort of followed it all the way around. Every about 10 feet, there was a cable, until you get to my truck. And where there's one last cable stretched out in front of my truck. Apparently that night, I'd taken out all the phone cords. And so I run into the room, quick, load up, we gotta go now. But because she has integrity, that room, the hourly charge and the phone cords, that's like the most expensive room I've ever rented in all my life. So, but it was though the next day when we were finishing our drive where we ended up having that conversation. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget it.
Truly. And we had this amazing conversation, but I told Greg, if we're going to get married, you have to make me one promise. And he said, at that point, I think you were pretty much ready to promise anything if I would marry you.
I was coming down off the stuff. Yeah.
But what I said was, my heart's desire has always been to adopt. That someone showed me that love, that acceptance, that grace, and took me in and gave me that gift. I would love to do that someday. And you agreed.
Yeah, and again, I would have agreed to anything. And yet I didn't realize the significance of that promise, and had no idea what that would turn out to be for our life, and just how God would use that simple promise. It was about 9 years ago that Erin and I talked off and on over the years about adopting, but as we were getting a little bit older, we finally decided that if we were going to do this, we needed to do this now. And so we were actually at a family camp, and we were teaching, kind of sent the couples off to walk around this little lake area and to pray about, what's God kind of calling you two together? What passion is he stirring inside your hearts? And so Erin and I walked, and as we talked about the same thing, we both just felt so convinced that we were supposed to adopt. And so the more we walked and talked about this, the more excited we got. And we actually said, well, we want to adopt a little boy or a little girl. And we both felt very, very strong that we wanted to adopt a little girl. And so we just didn't want to talk about this. We wanted to pray for this little girl by name. Erin's mother, who's since passed away, we wanted to name this little girl after her mother. Her mother's name is Rosalie Antoinette. We were going to name this little girl Antoinette Rose and call her Annie for short. And so for, 7 years, we prayed by name. God, bring us an Annie. Where's our Annie? There's no Annie yet. I mean, we prayed and prayed for Annie.
We prayed for her and prayed for her. We didn't know where she was. We thought maybe she was Russian, maybe Annie when she came into our home. Long story short, we went to China with Chick-fil-A to teach a marriage event. And we came back and we really fell in love with China. We thought it was an amazing place. The people is really who we fell in love with. And our friend so happened to go to China shortly after we did, and he came. We were teaching at John Brown University, sitting in our office on what seemed to be a very normal Monday afternoon. Our friend walks into the office and he says, "Hey, I hear you guys went to China and that you really want to teach some marriage stuff over there." And we said, "Yeah, we really would like that." And he said, "Well, did you guys get to go to an orphanage?" And we said, "No, no one would take us to an orphanage." He said, "Well, I did." And he was just exuding excitement. He said, "I held this little girl, and she needs hand surgery. And I have a friend who's a hand surgeon, so I'm going to try to connect them. She's in a Christian American orphanage, and her orphanage directors are passionate about marriage. And I think that you guys should connect with them." And we're like, "Great, wonderful." We prayed for that little girl that day in Greg's office. And actually, we prayed again for her several nights after that. To make a very long story short, our friend sent an email over to introduce us to these American orphanage directors. And they responded back, and we were CC'd on it. I looked on his computer for something one night in his email box, and I saw the letter from China, the email from China. Opened it up, and I was reading, "Greg, Erin, this is the Brennemans, da la la." In there, our friend asked, "How is the little girl that I held?" In the next sentence, about blew my mind. It said, "Annie is doing great." And literally I went, "Wait a minute, who's Annie?" And I looked again, and I went, "Oh my goodness, the little girl that he told us about that needs hand surgery, her name is Annie." And I called Greg and I said, "You're not going to believe this. The little girl that Kelly told us about, her name is Annie." And he said, "I know. You said, yes, this is a no-brainer." And I said, "Yeah, pretty much." We didn't know the first thing about adoption. We had prayed to adopt, but really hadn't taken any steps. We started our adoption process, and we started the home study. We did all the paperwork and on and on. And through that time, I went through just enormous fear. I liked that Candy talked about fear tonight, because for me it was fear. We were in our 40s. We already had 3 biological kids. How are we going to introduce a special needs child into our home in our 40s? It just wasn't what we had planned on. We had planned on adopting, we started praying, years before. Our kids were younger, and that's what our plan was. But obviously God had another plan. But through all of that, this guy literally stood firm. And he said, "You know what? I told God no once. I will not tell God no again. God has made it clear, this is our daughter." And so literally, 16 months later, 4th of July, 2010, Independence Day, we went and we received our little Annie. And largely because he stood firm in that this was the right time and the right child. Thus, Annie is now part of our family.
I think we even have a picture we'd like to show you real quick.
And she has all of that attitude. That was completely Annie initiated. So,
that for my story, I went from that dark time, and God has provided such healing over the years. I know that a lot of times we talk about women and what they need from, in terms of just abortion recovery, and a lot of times we don't talk a lot about the guys. I tell you what, it devastated me. It devastated me for years and years and years, and there was a lot that I had to deal with. And I think for me, some of the moments that stand out, was I think it was a focus on the family broadcast when we were in, Scott and I, Stixel, were in graduate school nearby in California. And so when I was driving one time and just heard the word abortion, and kind of, I didn't listen to talk radio, but I just kind of listened. And this woman was talking about how she had prayed and had asked God to really reveal the sex of her aborted child. And I thought, you could do that? And so I went home and I told Erin, I said, "Do you think you could really do that? Is that possible?" And went for a season, just really with my wife, able to pray and just ask. And I'll never forget, there was a night that in deep sleep that I just had the most vivid dream. And I saw a picture that my mom of me that she had on the wall. So, I mean, I remember walking by it millions of times, but I saw this image. It was me, but I saw this image of a little boy that looked just like me sitting on Jesus' lap. You know, I'll never forget that. And just watching, you know, Jesus just comfort this little boy. I remember waking up and I said, I really believe that was my son. And it was just so amazing that we had a ceremony and I gave him my name, and it just made him so real. And that was a huge, huge healing time for me. And then when this opportunity, you know, to adopt, it just, you know, I mean, like Erin said, I just knew that never again would I say no to the Lord. And, you know, there are Irenes out there. There are Aaron's out there. There are plenty of Gregs out there, and there are plenty of Annies. And they need someone to really to intervene on their behalf.
Mm-hmm. The definition of intervene, it's a verb, and it means to come between so as to prevent or alter the result or course of events. And like Greg said, there are Irenes out there that need someone to stand for them and intervene. There are Aarons who are out there that need someone to intervene. There are Gregs out there who need someone to intervene, and there are Annies out there who need someone to intervene. That's your opportunity tonight, that you have the chance. God allows us to come alongside of him and to be his hands and feet to people who are in need, who are brokenhearted. And that is the opportunity you have tonight.
You know, we want to end with just the last part of the verse that we've already read, that says, "And they will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor. They will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. They will renew the ruined cities that have been devastated for generations." Again, you've got such an amazing opportunity through your prayer, through your support, through your financial resources, to intervene, as Erin has said, is to stand by and to renew the brokenhearted, to rebuild, renew, and restore those that have been long devastated. And I know that for me, just again on a very personal note, you know, just thank you guys for the ministry that you're being a part of. Because I know there's going to be a scared mom, a scared dad who are going to come in and may not have anyone else to intervene on their behalf. But through the CareNet, that's just why I'm just so passionate that there is another option. I so wish that I would have had that. You know, God's forgiven me, and the shame and all that's gone. But there doesn't a day go by that I would give anything to have my son here. I know someday I'll get to meet him, and it'll be a good day. Lord, we thank you. We thank you for this ministry, Lord. Thank you for these men and women who have gathered here tonight, Lord, to support in whatever way they can. Lord, thank you for Candy, Lord, for her leadership, for her passion, Lord, for her team, the countless volunteers who give their time and resources, Lord, to minister to these brokenhearted men and women. Lord, we pray that this ministry